Carbon Neutral was formed back in 2001 by Men of the Trees, which is a not-for-profit organisation wanting to plant more trees in the rural landscape. They formed it because they foresaw an emerging carbon market back in 2001, that's 13 years ago. Voluntary plantings, small scale. 2006, Al Gore, the inconvenient truth, resulted in a huge demand for offsetting and tree planting. And so Carbon Neutral then formed its own company. Carbon Neutral helps businesses and families and people measure and reduce and offset their carbon emissions, whether it be their vehicles, their businesses or their homes. And the primary business is offsetting through reforestation projects, through biodiverse reforestation. Trees sequester carbon, so they pull carbon out of the atmosphere and generate oxygen, so it's a legitimate way of creating offsets. People are realising we can't rely on government to help the environment to that extent, so many companies, many businesses and people are stepping forward wanting to do something in their own right, and they see tree planting as having a dual role, creating carbon offsets and helping the environment.
I got involved in the carbon offset industry back in 2006, and I saw it from the start as being a classic win-win situation. We have over-cleared this country. Most of the shires up this way are 95% cleared. For those organisations that cannot avoid their emissions, they can offset their emissions with us, Carbon Neutral, to plant trees out here to help revegetate the country. Yes, it'll be a lot easier to have a regulated market and certainty, and certainly some of the large emitters in this country prefer the certainty, especially their shareholders. So I see it as a really good opportunity for Carbon Neutral in the voluntary market, where businesses that still want to do something, you know, they don't understand the political situation as such, but they still actually want to do something with their emissions. So by offsetting with Carbon Neutral, that can still happen. Quite simply, organisations like Saving Green can, through their products and services, choose to offset with us, and then we can plant in the wheat belt out here to revegetate. We go in and measure their energy. We suggest ways that they can reduce through lighting, through energy efficiencies. Then we say, okay, those emissions that you cannot avoid, allow us to basically store the carbon that you've emitted through planting of trees. There are numerous benefits to establishing forest carbon sinks for sequestering carbon, and we call them co-benefits. They're environmental, social and economic. Some of the environmental benefits include the usual getting rid of the salt, stopping wind erosion, water erosion, and also creating and re-establishing habitat for some of our most endemic species like the Carnaby cockatoo and even the malleefowl. The social benefits include employing local Indigenous people. We've employed nearly up to 5 and 6 in the last 2 or 3 years, helping with seed collection, fencing, and the economic benefits have been numerous as well, with us realising we've spent nearly $4 million and utilising up to 80 local businesses over that last 5 or 6 years. So yes, there are lots of what we call co-benefits other than storing carbon in forest carbon sinks. One of the difficulties of the biodiversity model is that it is hard to measure the rates. For example, this big eucalyptus here, we've destructively sampled an 80-year-old tree, and there was nearly a tonne of carbon stored in that tree. Whereas if you look at these acacias, multi-stemmed and not going to grow as big, so that would say after 20 years only be about 200 kilos. So there are differences, but we account for that with all our destructive sampling and